Grapes series, and Craig is speaking today here at Orion, and it's a great message. I was at the 9 o'clock, and it's a great message. I hope you're ready for it, learning how we need to prune to grow and bear fruit. So super good day. Get ready, get your notepads, get your Bibles, and we'll see you at the end of this service. Yeah, bye-bye.
Good morning, Kensington. Let's go ahead and stand up as we celebrate and worship Jesus. As we celebrate that He is our firm foundation and the one that we can always count on.
Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. Yeah. Sing, He won't. I've still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. So I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I built my life on Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. and I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through. Rain came, wind blew, my house was built on you, and I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through. Rain came, wind blew, my house was built on you, and I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through. Oh, I'm gonna make it through. 'Cause I'm standing strong on you. Oh, I'm gonna make it through. 'Cause my house is built on you. I'm gonna make it through. My house is built on you. Christ is my firm foundation. A rock on which I stand. When everything around me is shaking, oh, I'm never glad. Oh, I put my faith in Jesus. No, 'cause He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. Come on, you sing it. Shout it. He won't. He won't fail. He won't. No, He won't fail. No, He won't. No, He won't. No, He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. No, He won't. No, He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. No, no, He won't. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was me or not, but let's pray real quick. Father God, Father, we just thank you for always being the constant in our life, being the firm foundation, being the solid rock that we can stand upon, being the one true thing that we can rely on every time. Always consistent, never changing, and never failing. We love you, Father. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, guys, go ahead and have a seat and take a look at the screens.
Sam Anderson here on behalf of Full Throttle and our Move Out Network to tell you about an incredible raffle that we have here at Kensington. Now, to do this, I had to wear my leather jacket and I had to get my Stang stash going because we're raffling off a 1972 Mustang. So this thing is absolutely gorgeous and we are raffling this thing off for only $20 a ticket. You can get one ticket for 20 bucks or you can get 3 tickets for 50 bucks. And basically, all of the proceeds are going to fuel our Move Out Network. Now, if you don't know what our Move Out Network is, it's a network of over 50 groups that are active in Metro Detroit and actually all across the state of Michigan. We have community gardens, we have the Micah 6 Project, we have our school partners. They're just being the hands and feet of Jesus to our local communities. Now, the raffle drawing is on the 19th, which means you have between now and Father's Day. So if you messed up on Mother's Day and you didn't do a great job with the gift and all that, this is an awesome opportunity for you to get some tickets for mom so that she can have this beast in the drive. Or you can get some tickets for your dad for Father's Day. Now, your dad's not gonna be mad that you spent a couple bucks on this opportunity here, okay? He's not gonna be like, what the heck? I wanted that ugly tie and those, socks with my face on them. That's not what he's looking for. He's looking for this. I mean, this thing is an absolute beast. It's got Krager 15-inch wheels. And actually, the convertible part is actually automatic. You hit this little switch and it comes back all on its own. It has a Cleveland 351, big old V8 muscle car engine in it. I mean, check out this interior. It's got this white vinyl interior. It's an automatic, so you don't have to be able to drive a manual to use it. I mean, this thing is an absolute beast. If I could pay $20 and have a chance at driving this car, I would jump all over the opportunity. So make sure you visit kensingtonchurch.org/Mustang to get more info, more details. There's more specs on the car. There's more details about the Move Out Network and how maybe you can even jump in and serve with that. But join this raffle, man. This thing is sweet.
Okay, so if you're wondering, yes, he did say Stang Stash.
It's a thing,
okay?
apparently for Sam.
It is a thing, and Becky, I was watching, I see a few.
Yeah.
Some of these guys are rocking the Stang Stash.
Yeah,
so I hope
absolutely.
you bought your tickets.
I'm Becky. I'm part of the Move Out team here at Kensington, and I'm so happy to be here with one of my longtime friends and running buddies, Susan. And we just want to welcome you today. We want to welcome you if you're here in person with us, but also if you're streaming and hopefully sitting in the beautiful Michigan weather watching. But hopefully you got to see the car on your way in. Some of our Full Throttle team that actually refurbished the vehicle are out there. They would love to tell you a little bit about what they do. They're an amazing team of volunteers. Already this year they have gifted cars to 5 Afghan families that we've been coming alongside to help resettle here in Metro Detroit. They have gifted cars to some of our Move Out partners, and they are an amazing group of guys. So stop and meet them on your way out, and then we are selling the tickets right at the table out in the lobby. 3 for $50 seems to be what everybody's doing here today, so we love the Orion campus. You can also get tickets online up until Father's Day.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Let's trade. All right, so a couple things. One is we want to sell the most tickets here at Orion because we're a little competitive, so go on out there. What is that, 3 for $50?
3 for $50.
Come on, that's like lunch nowadays, so just go out and buy some. Secondly, I just do want to give a quick shout out to Move Out because it is what Kensington does as the hands and feet of Christ. It is amazing, so thank you. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. All right, welcome everybody online. We are so glad to see you. I have a quick couple things to make sure you know about. One, we have a big midweek coming up this Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month, and you wonder, why is it big? Well,
Ice cream.
that's right, because there's going to be ice cream. No pizza this month, but there's going to be ice cream. And you know what? If you have not had a chance to come and check out our midweeks, truly, you need to do that. We shrink the room down. It's a little bit more of an intimate crowd. We kind of do worship in the round to some extent. There's extended worship, always a great message, just a great interruption to your week. So think about coming for that. We also have a K-Kids mini golf event coming up next Sunday that if you sign up for right now, you're going to get a discount. And if you want to meet people in your community and show them what an amazing mini golfer you are, you definitely are going to want to come to this. And something else you're going to definitely want to do is volunteer this summer or serve in our kids area. We're looking for a few good men and women to step back there, hang out with our kids. It's a little less structured. It's a blast back there. We try to give a little bit of time to our kind of school year leaders and let them take some time off in the summer. Let them. No, I shouldn't say that. Offer them a little time off in the summer, so please consider stepping in for that as well. Let's see, we also have Bible Basics and Alpha starting again this summer, so we decided to offer it in the summer. We've had such an incredible response. If you have not yet done either of those, can I just tell you, no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, I don't care if you've been like reading the Bible in Aramaic for the last 25 years, you still have something that you can learn in that. Becky, you've taken it.
Yeah, and it's a great thing to actually invite somebody to come with you for. It's super great for people wherever you are in your faith journey.
Yeah, that's great. Think about who you want to invite and definitely do it. You've got a little bit more time this summer. We'd love to have you do it. Next week, we are having our annual vote. And we would love for you to take the time, either online or come on in and participate in that vote. It's really important that we have as much representation as we can so that we can get this right. So we really appreciate you doing that. We are in week 2 of the Vine and Grape series. Craig's got an amazing message, some props, some shears, and he's going to talk a little bit about pruning. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Wait, luau, go ahead.
We
Tom.
love our volunteers, so come to the luau on your way out today.
Bye, everybody.
And the luau is where? Down in the cafe. So I can't stand when you say that I have an amazing message, by the way, because what if it's not? Like, this might be just like a ho-hum one today. People are like, oh, that was not that amazing. You're setting me up, man. Good morning. So, hey, real quick, can we just, I don't even know if they're in the room right now, but can we just put our hands together and appreciate our Full Throttle team, just their dedication, their commitment, the way that they serve. It's an awesome, awesome group. And I was debating having you also clap for Sam's stash, but we're not going to do that. Just wish I could wear one like that. By the way, if I win the Mustang, nothing suspicious happened. Just look away. But I'm gonna try and load that one, stack it my direction. All right, so here's what I would love to do. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do something really quick, spur of the moment. You want me to give you a little thing to do for midweek? Those of you that are going to come to midweek this week, give you a little pre-homework. All right, so none of you are going to do this, but like 4 of you. But for the 4 of you, stay with me for a minute. It's going to be fun. I'm going to talk this next midweek about what it is that gets Jesus up out of his throne. According to the Bible, he is currently, at this moment, he is seated in his throne at the right hand of the Father. There are a couple times in the Bible we get indication of him standing up from his throne. I want you to see if you can find between now and midweek what it is that makes him stand up from his throne. All of you are going to be like, I'm not doing that. So for the 4 of you that are going to do it, come find me on midweek. I want to know what you found out. And Susan will give you an amazing award. That's what's going to happen. So, all right, I want to take us back for just a minute to where we started the morning before we go any further. So we sang a song about the truth of God's faithfulness to us and in our lives. So I want to take us back to the lyrics. I'm going to put them up on the screen. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. When everything around me is shaken, I'll never be more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, because he's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? And the answer is, he won't. I think one of the most disorienting experiences in life is when you put your trust, when you put your faith, your confidence in somebody that does let you down. Because you know as well as I do, we put our faith in God, but we also put levels of our faith and our confidence, our trust into people. And one of the most disorienting experiences is when you trust somebody, you expect somebody, you count on somebody in your life to be a sort of firm foundation for you, to help keep things stabilized, and you experience the opposite effect with them. They betray you, they let you down, they turn your life into what feels more uncertain or shaky ground into stable ground. So my son, who's getting married in 2 weeks, so Father's Day weekend, I will not be with you because that's where I'm going to be. He decided for his bachelor party, you'd have to know my son. He's a total outdoors kid, loves being outside for everything, big hiker, being in nature, living off the land kind of stuff. So for his bachelor party, he decided he wanted the whole crew to do some backcountry hiking and camping for a couple days. So 2 weekends ago, that's where I was at. I was with him, his whole crew, and we went down to Kentucky, did a couple days in Mammoth Cave, and then hiking the backcountry. The thing is, there were 2 guys in the group that had never done anything like this before. So like most of us had done this kind of stuff before. We do it even regularly, but there were 2 guys, they've never even like camped. Like camping to them is staying at a really nice hotel. So they're like, what do we do? What do we need? And so we had to coach these guys through for a couple of weeks. Like there's a text thread, here's what to bring, here's what to do, kind of here's how to pack. You get one guy in there, he's like, where do I put my hamburgers? Does somebody have a cooler? I'm like, no, dude, we're not bringing coolers. This is backcountry, man. You're bringing everything in on your backpack. Like, that's it. And so we get there, and these 2 guys that had never done it before, it was super fun. Like, even watching my son and his buddies who've done this a ton, like just kind of teaching them, like, here's how to pack your bag, here's where to put the weight, here's the gear you're gonna need, and just kind of leading them along. So they're totally dependent on us. They're like, all right, we're trusting you guys to help us get through this safely. Are we gonna get eaten by bears? Do we need bear spray? I'm like, calm down, it's gonna be okay. So we get out into the woods and we start hiking, and we're like a mile in, and we realized immediately, this is the worst marked trail I've ever seen. Like, there's no blazes anywhere. There's hardly any signage. The couple of places where you get crossroads and there was a sign is somebody's taken it away and there's now just a post. We're like, well, this is interesting. So the two guys in particular, they start panicking a little bit. They're like, I thought you guys knew what you were doing. Because we're a little disoriented too. We're like, I think, what was the sun? Okay, I think that's north. We're going that way. And they're like, do you guys know what you're doing? So at one point they're even asking if we go back to the truck. They're like, we know where the truck's at. Do you guys even know where camp is at? I'm like, it's like 10 miles that direction somewhere. So they're like, we should go back to the truck. We know where that's at. It's air conditioning. We'll camp around the truck. I'm like, that's lame. We're not going back to the truck. Trust us. We got this. It's good. So we keep on hiking and keep on hiking. At one point, the tick conversation begins on the hike. They're like, hey, somebody goes, hey, watch out for ticks. These two guys freak out. They're like, what? Wait, there's ticks out here? I'm like, it's nature. Yes, you're not at home. So like, well, we don't want to get ticks. It's Lyme disease. We're like, you're fine. Just stop worrying. And so eventually we get to camp. We find where it's at. All was good. We start setting camp up. Half the guys had hammocks. So they start hanging their hammocks. A couple of us had tents. We get everything set up. My son, who like does this all the time, he's got this like bougie setup where he's got his hammock. He's got this tarp covering it. He's got a string of lights above his hammock. He's got like this floral arrangement and an entrance. I'm like, what are you doing, you Instagram camper? Like, stop it. So we get everything's all set up. It's beautiful, and we're just having a great time out there. These guys are feeling way more calm now. They're totally relaxed. They're like, all right, maybe we could get into this like whole camping thing. And then it starts getting into the night. We're sitting around the campfire, having a great time. Everybody's eating dinner, and we're talking. And one guy reaches up and scratches his neck and goes, hey, what is that? And another guy goes, oh, dude, you got a tick. And I have never seen in that moment, I've never seen a dozen men more quickly stand up, drop their pants to their ankles, take off their shirts, grab flashlights, and everybody is an inch away from each other. And all you hear for the next 10 minutes is, now that one's a mole. You got a lot of red bumps, man. What are all those for? And it's just like 10 minutes just scouring over each other's bodies looking for ticks. Half the guys ended up having ticks, and they're picking them out and everything. So now these two dudes are freaking out. They're like, where did you bring us? This is a fifth ring of hell. I'm like, stop it. So we get through the rest of the night. Everybody's tick-free, calms down. We get decent night's sleep. Next day, we hike again, and they get back to the truck eventually. And it's so cool. I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, these guys are never going to do this again. They are so done with ever hiking and camping. And both of them come up, and they go, this was amazing. And they go, what's the stuff that we need to do this again? I'm like, whoa, wait, what? And they go, yeah, we want to go buy some. We're going to REI today. Like, what's the list of things that we need? Because we did not have the right gear. So they literally walked out of the woods with a list of gear that they were going to go buy so that they could start doing this again. And they're planning on going on a trip with us again next year. Here's why I'm telling you all that and what it has to do with today. Because you're like, oh, great story. What's the point? I think the longer we walk with Jesus in relationship, we have an experience that feels similar to that. Where we trust him, like we sang, to be our firm foundation, to never let us down, to make the ground that otherwise shakes become firm underneath our feet. And the reality is, the longer you walk with Jesus, you will have moments in your life where the ground does start to shake, where you start to question him, where you start to wonder if he knows what he's doing. And every single time, it will put you at a crossroads where you're going to have to make a decision. Go back to the truck or keep on hiking. Keep on the journey. If you stay on the journey, a couple of things I guarantee will happen. Number one, you will grow through the experience. And at the end of it and on the other side of it, what usually will happen is that you will find something new within you being birthed that wasn't there when you started. We've been in a series that we launched last week. This is week 2. We're going to be in this for the next couple weeks of the summer, looking at a passage in John chapter 15 where Jesus taught probably one of the most important moments of teaching ever, where he taught about himself and us in this analogy of vines and fruit and connected and disconnected. So many layers of this story, and we're going to go for a couple of weeks and try in the same passage to understand different aspects of the truth and the depth and the layers that are in it. So I'm going to pray for a minute, just ask God to speak clearly to us this morning, that we can hear him, we can know him, and that something about this text would make sense to us more than maybe before when we came in. So let me pray. Father, I am so thankful for the chance to be able to stand in places like this and to talk on your behalf, to speak about you and your truths. And yet it's not lost on me that at the same time I'm talking about them, I'm trying to understand them. I'm trying to continue to grow in my understanding of you and me and you and what it is you've called me to. And so, God, I pray that you'd be gracious to me this morning, that as I speak on your behalf, that my words would be truthful and true to who you are, Jesus, would be truthful and true to your scriptures, that you would help all of us to hear your voice, that more than mine, God, you would do a work this morning that we would, even if we're at a place where we're struggling to know if there even is a you, that we would have a sense somehow in our curiosity and in our exploration of you, that we would still have a sense that you spoke today. And I pray that you would make sense of this story that you told that I do believe transcends time, but also it needs and requires certain context. And so I pray, God, that you would help it to make sense to us today. And maybe would you even do a good work that it would make the kind of sense to us that it even did to the original listeners. To your glory and to our benefit. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so real quick, I'm going to take a minute. We're going to do part of what is just being a community for us as a church and take up our offering today. So if you're a part of Kensington and you've been around for a while, you know this is a part of what we do. It's part of who we are. It's a part of what fuels things like you just heard about with Move Out. This is part of what helps us get out of these walls. We really do not believe that being a Christian means going to church. This is such a fraction of what it means to be followers of Jesus. But what happens here should fuel and inform what we do outside of here. That's why Move Out is so important for us. Move Out does not happen, as well as so many other things that we do, without you, without your generosity, without your partnership and all of that. So all the ways to give, we have buckets that we pass. You can do it that way, or you can even do any of the number of options on the screen. So just thank you. We appreciate all of you and all that we're able to do because of you. So, all right, so John chapter 15 is where we're going to be. If you've got a Bible, you may want to open it up, follow along with me. I'm going to really highlight a couple of verses. If you are the type of person, I am, likes to write, highlight in your Bible, this is a great day to just be ready for that. Probably mark a few things that maybe even will be important for you to go back and read and look at more later. But John 15, if you don't have a Bible or don't know where to find John, all is good. We're going to put it on the screen. This is probably one of the most layered teachings that Jesus ever gives. We could spend, in all honesty, weeks and weeks and weeks in this passage alone. But there is one particular aspect of this passage that I want to point out, but I want to read it first in context. So John 15, a couple verses, stay with me, 1 through 11. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, and he prunes it so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Now remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into a fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. There are a lot of different things that we could focus in this passage, and that's part of the reason why this series is going to be so long. We're going to try to honor some of the things in this text that you can't just cover in 1 week. But the thing that I want to lean into the most this morning, I'll just give it to you right now and then make a couple of statements about it. The thing of importance that we're going to give attention to this morning is fruitfulness and what it indicates. On your screen, verse 8, look what Jesus says about the fruit in our life and what it is that it shows. If you keep my commands, you will, this is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. So he says there is a relationship between you being my disciple and the fruit in your life. Or I'll just say it this way. I'm going to make a couple big statements right off the bat this morning with this message. To be a Christian is to produce spiritual fruit. In other words, to be in an honest, sincere, life-giving, eternity-securing relationship with God is evidenced by the fact that there is growing spiritual fruit in your life and being produced through your life to your benefit and to the benefit of people around you. Which means that the absence of spiritual fruit is indication of an absence of relationship with Jesus. An absence of spiritual fruit is indication of an absence of relationship with Jesus. You might go, well, okay, we're in church, so we can check that spiritual fruit off the list, right? We're good with God because here we are. Except, this isn't the only place that Jesus teaches with this kind of an analogy of fruit and vines and cut off and being a part of and abiding in. But there's a place in the book of Matthew, chapter 7, we're gonna go there right now, where Jesus takes this analogy even a step further to make sure that we do not confuse spiritual fruit with religious behavior because they're not the same. So Matthew chapter 7, this is what Jesus says. He says, by their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire, and thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Now, here's where he goes a step further. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. And many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not drive out demons in your name and perform many miracles? And this is possibly one of the most sobering verses in all the Bible. And then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. And so away from me, you evildoer. There are people performing a lot of religious behavior that Jesus says there will be a day where I will look at them and say, I actually never knew you. There wasn't a relationship there. There was spiritual behavior. There wasn't spiritual fruit. There was religious behavior. There wasn't real connection with me. There are passages in the Bible that when you read them, when we study them, teachings of Jesus that at times, and you've been here for many of these, if you've been here any length of time, that will create hope in you. And some that will create joy, and some that will create peace, and some that will create a sense of steadfastness. Some that will leave us kind of walking out of here just feeling great. But there are also others along with that, and at the same time, passages like this that should evoke within us a sense of awe and fear of the position of God over all creation. And not fear as in afraid of, but fear as in wonder of. The same kind of fear that would lead you to climb Mount Everest. You don't do that casually, you don't do that idly, you don't do that carelessly, right? There's a certain fear in that, an awe, a wonder. There are certain places where Jesus' words should create within us a sense of awe and wonder and even a fear that moves us to do the work of an internal inventory to really ask ourselves, how am I with God? Like, am I just a religious person? Do I just go through the motions? Or am I actually pursuing Him? Am I connected to Him? Is there vibrant relationship with Him? Evidenced by there being the presence of spiritual fruit. Like, this is one of those passages that should do more than just evoke a feeling. It should actually evoke a little bit of inventory. But to do some of that inventory, you also have to understand contextually some of what Jesus is talking about. Like what does he mean when he says, I am the true vine? And what's the difference between being cut off and being pruned? And then in the end, he talks about obedience, not even just ours to him, but his to the Father. So somewhere in there, obedience even has implication on the fruit that would be born in our lives. And so if we're going to do the inventory, we have to understand some of what it is he's talking about here. So I'm going to go back, verse 1, and I won't do this the whole way through, but there's a few verses I want to highlight and really lean into. Verse 1, again, he says this, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Now, what's fascinating is that he doesn't just say I'm the vine, he says I'm the true vine. And here's why it's fascinating. Because to the first century Jewish listener, this would have had all kinds of meaning for them. This would have been a radical statement. But much of that gets lost on us because of context. I want to provide some of that for you because this is huge. We can just read over it. And some of you have read this passage many times, super familiar with it. And you're like, yeah, Jesus is a true vine. But we have lost what he's saying when he says, I'm the true vine, because we don't understand in context what the first century Jewish listener would have understood. All through the Old Testament part of the Bible, you know who was referred to as the vine? Was Israel, the nation of Israel, God's first chosen people. And the reason they were referred to as the vine is because this was the nation that God had chosen to specifically be connected to him to be the benefit of all humanity. Because it would be through them and through their connection to him that he would grow the fruit that would be the spiritual nourishment for all of humanity, would be the spiritual fruit for all of humanity, the spiritual blessing for all of humanity, that being Jesus Christ. And so all through the Old Testament, the vine is actually Israel, because they're the ones connected directly to him that will bear the fruit that will be the gift to all creation and all humanity. However, what's interesting is that the majority of the time that you see God specifically referencing Israel as the vine in the Old Testament, it's in a disciplinary way. It's because they have actually broken relationship. They've wandered off. It's because they have chosen instead to be connected to the vine that they're connected to all kinds of other things, their own desires, their own passions, to other foreign gods. And as a result, what their lives begin to produce is bad fruit. Bad fruit that affects them, bad fruit that affects their nation, bad fruit that affects even the surrounding communities and the world. And so it's interesting because most of the time that God says to them, you're my vine, it's to rebuke them, it's to correct them. Jeremiah, on your screen, this is an example of just one of those times. Many are like it though. I had planted you like a choice vine. Again, speaking to Israel, of sound and reliable stock. How then did you turn against me into a corrupt wild vine? So they were intended to be the vine, but most of the time that God talks to them, he's talking to them to correct them, to challenge them, to rebuke them for having separated themselves and wandered off and then thus producing bad fruit. So this is what's so radical. And again, this is where it can get lost on us. If you're a first century Jew, you have understood your heritage to be the vine of God. But you also know that you have constantly screwed that up. You have not lived up to that expectation. And then here comes Jesus and he says to you, I, not you anymore, I am the true vine. In other words, here's what he's saying. Israel, I will be, no longer you, I will be, and my work will be what will perfectly unite you, indestructibly unite you to God, not your behavior anymore. It will be all up to me, all about me, not about you and how good you can be. It's all about me. I will be the true vine. Where you fail, I will succeed. Where you fall, I will stand. Where you are faithless, I will be faithful. Where you are incapable of producing the kind of fruit that pleases God, I can, I do, I will, I am. I am the true vine. Like, this is literally him saying to them, hey, all that time that you knew you messed it up and you broke relationship with God and bad fruit came, listen to me, I got you. Like, this is him saying, I've got you. Like, I will be what connects you to the Father. I will be your certainty. I will be your security, not you trying to generate that in your own strength and in your own good deeds. I will do that for you. I will be the vine for you. Like, this is a radical shift for what the Israelites understood about how to relate to God. And equally for us, like, some of us grew up in a kind of faith tradition or a church where it was all about how good you could be. I've shared tons of stories before that was my upbringing, to the point that even as a high school student, because I wore a hat into the auditorium, I was walked out of the auditorium, called out by the choir director, whole service stopped, and he yelled at me in front of the entire room with my friend who'd never been to church before. Guess when he came back again? Never. Like, so some of us, that's been our experience in church growing up. It's all about how good you can be. That was Israel. We got to be really good. And they kept screwing it up. Well, you know what I know about us is that we will keep screwing it up. So Jesus says, I came to do what you can't do. I'm the true vine. And this is as much a statement about who he is as what he does. Sometimes when Jesus teaches, he tells us who he is. Sometimes he tells us what he does. Sometimes he does both. This is a both where he's saying, here's who I am the true vine, and here's what I do. As the vine, I accomplish the work to satisfy God's expectations in a way that you can never do, to make sure you are brought into relationship and secure in that relationship forevermore. I'm the true vine. So if he's the vine, and that's not something put on Israel and thus us anymore, then what does that make us? We read it, not a trick question. We are the branches. We're the branches, and it's our job then to stay connected to the vine. Verse 2, Jesus says this. He, speaking of the Father who's the gardener, cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. This verse right here is probably one of the most difficult verses in all of the Bible, in all of Jesus' teachings. It's one that has separated even whole denominations in belief on how it is that God relates to us. And it's because of that phrase, cut you off. And there's a lot of different ways to interpret this. There's different ways that people have tried to understand what God's meaning. Brilliant men and women and theologians down through the centuries are divided on what this verse actually talks about. Some believe that this is a reference to God saying that he cuts some of us out because we're not keeping up our end of the bargain, that you can lose your salvation. I just don't see that consistently throughout all of Scripture that would make sense that that's what he's saying. Especially because we get God's favor by grace, not by behavior. Which means if you can't do anything to earn it, you can't do anything to lose it. Because if you can do anything to lose it, that means you did at least a little bit to justify earning it. But that's not the case. You know, Revelation even says that when we are in the family of God, he inscribes us on his hand. The tattoo on my forearm, that's my son's name. Like, there's no point where I ever go, well, regretting that one and rubbing that off. Like, I just don't see God going, well, you know what? Okay, Mike, sorry, taking that one off my hand, replacing it with Jim. Like, I just don't see this consistent with everything else that we read throughout the Bible about God's character. However, what I do think he is alluding to is something that we do see consistently throughout the Bible. When Jesus teaches on this idea of vine and separation and cut off versus pruning. And here's what I tend to believe is more consistent with the heart and the teachings of Jesus throughout the Scriptures. And it's this, that the cut off is referencing that there are some people who by their own choice will choose not to be connected to the vine. And in so much as not being connected to the vine, consequently, they are cut off of relationship with God and of all the benefits of relationship with God by their choice. So I was trying to think this last week, like, how do I even explain this? Like, is there an analogy? Because some of you are brand new in your journey with God. And you're like, dude, I'm just trying to get my head around the fact that there is a God and I can know him and relate with him. And now you're throwing at me this cut-off idea. Like, what the heck? So imagine it this way. Imagine I tell you all right now, hey, I'm throwing a party this week and everybody here is invited. You can all come. And as a part of coming to my party, before you leave, door prize, every one of you is getting a check for $1 million. Now, some of you, you just heard $1 million and you're like, I'm in. I'll be there. Give me the address. And others of you, you're going to go, I'm going to do my work because that seems a little suspicious. Nobody just gives away $1 million. I don't even think you have that much money. You work for Kensington, so I'm going to do my work. I'm going to see what you actually have in the bank, and you're going to do your work, and you're going to find out whether or not I'm truthful. And if I'm truthful, you're going to go, apparently he can back up what he says. I did my work, and you're going to come. And then others of you are going to decide you don't want to come for a variety of reasons. Some of you are going to decide you don't like the location. You're like, I don't like the venue. Some of you are going to hear about who's catering it, and you're going to decide you don't like the food, so you're not going to come. Some of you are going to come just out of disbelief. Like, there's no way anybody's that good. Nobody's going to give away $1 million. Nobody's got that. That's wishful thinking. That's not going to happen. And then next Sunday, everybody who came to my party and got $1 million is going to be talking about it. And you're going to go, oh my gosh, there was really a party? Can I get in on that $1 million now? And I'm going to say, I invited you. You didn't want to come. And you chose not to come, and in choosing not to come, you consequently chose to cut yourself off from the benefit of having come. Even the hiking party that we took, there were actually some of the people in Tobin's party that weren't able to make it. They had to work or they had conflict with their schedule. And in the text thread afterwards, there was all the, oh, this was awesome, that was awesome, and pictures shared. And you could see some of the guys in their disappointment going, dang it. I should have just quit my job to go. I should have done something different. I should have been there. Like, just that sense of loss and regret that they didn't choose to come. And by not choosing to come, they lost out on the experience. Again, it's not a perfect analogy. But here's the reality of part of what I think you have to contend with in this passage, and we can't just gloss over, is that the unbelievable, scandalous grace and love of Jesus, listen to me, is that every single human being who has ever, does, and ever will live has the chance to be connected to the vine. But the sad reality of humanity is not everyone will choose to. Is that many will say no. And as important as this is, it's not the main thrust of the passage. I don't think we can ignore it, but I want to camp with the fruitfulness. Because Jesus is talking about the spiritual fruit in the lives of those who are choosing to connect to him, to remain in him, as we talked about last week. And for all of us, what Jesus is saying in this passage is there's one of two ways that we will relate to him in regards to this whole idea of vines and branches, connection or not connection. One is being cut off. Two is being cut back. That's the pruning. You don't have another option. It's either cut off or cut back. And you're like, don't really like either of those because they both involve the word cut. Prefer not to be. Is there another option? Do we have door number 3, please? Jesus says, here's the way you're going to relate to me. It's either you're going to choose not to want to have anything to do with me. There's cut off or there's cut back when I prune. You know, one of the greatest lies that has seeped into Christianity that has influenced so many of us is this idea that life with God will lead to a sort of utopian kind of living, where everything is just good and it works out and you're healthy and you're well and you're wealthy and your right house and the right spouse and all the rest of it. And if you don't have that, then maybe you don't have God's favor, or maybe you don't have God's blessing, or maybe God's mad at you and he's punishing you. That is so we have guarded ourselves in this broken ideology, kind of like a spiritual bubble, to pretend that nothing bad should happen to us when we're walking with God. And then we don't know what to do when life does get painful. It's foolishness. Nowhere in the Bible does it say, as you walk with God, everything is just going to be perfect. There will be moments that are painful. Here's what's important to understand about pruning. Pruning is painful, but it's not punishment. It's painful, but it's not punishment. You go, well I'm going to take objection with the word pain, though. I don't care if it's punishment or not. I don't want the pain. But again, here's where that broken ideology of walking with God doesn't lead to any kind of pain has seeped into so many of us, is that we cannot conceive of a God who would intentionally do anything in our life that would create pain for us. But all of us, even if you're not a parent, I think we probably at least understand parenting enough, even if you're not one yet, to realize that that's not how we relate to our own kids. How many parents in the room? Real quick. Okay. How many of you have made decisions throughout the course of your parenting that to your children, for their well-being, either at the present or in the future, but to your children, those decisions come across as unkind, unpopular, or even at times painful? Yeah. If you haven't done that, you're either not a parent or you're a bad parent. Like, that's just the reality. That's part of what we do as parents. We realize that. That doesn't mean I take joy in it. You have to get a shot. I love the pain. Right? We just realize that's part of the reality of parenting, is I have to make decisions for my children's well-being that at times will at best be unpopular, at worst will be painful for them. Where do you think that characteristic comes from? It's not a trick question. Book of Lamentations in the Bible. Let me show you where it comes from. This is God writing to us, and he says this, verse 32. Though he brings grief, he will show compassion. So great is his unfailing love. For he does not willingly bring pain and affliction and grief to anyone. There was years ago, I remember hearing somebody teach this passage, and I was sitting in the seats and I was listening, and they neglected probably one of the most important words in this passage. When they read the verse, they read it, for he does not bring affliction or grief to anyone. And I, foolishly, didn't do my work to go back and actually read the verse myself, and I took it for what he said, and so I quoted that verse that way for many years. God does not bring pain and affliction on the sons of men. Until one day I actually read the verse myself, and I was like, for he does not willingly. Well, that wasn't in there when I quoted it before. That changes everything. He does not willingly bring affliction or grief on anyone. Now, when we usually use the word willingly, we're saying somebody forced us into it. I didn't willingly do it. Right? I got coerced or I got forced into it. God's God. Nobody's forcing him or coercing him. So when he says willingly, the actual context, the language, what he's saying here is, I do not bring grief with pleasure, but I do with purpose. I do with purpose. You go, well, for what purpose would God bring anything painful into my life? To prune you, to produce more fruit in you, to produce more fruit through you. And we're going to talk more about this next week, but Galatians 5 doesn't leave it a mystery to us what the fruit is. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. The things that we crave to be our own experience, and when they are, they become also the experience we extend to other people. His pruning, which can be painful, though is not punishment, is to produce more fruit in us and to produce more fruit through us. I've got, in my yard, my backyard, the entire yard is lined by a set of hedges, big, giant hedges, about 10 feet tall. They need to be cut back about every 2 years. I think I'm like 3 years in at this point, so they're totally needing to be cut back now. It's among all the things you do when you've got family coming in from out of town for a wedding. Like, I mean, a month ago, I was like, hedges look fine. All of a sudden, I'm like, man, they look like garbage. So I'm out there trimming all the hedges. My arms are cut up. My legs are cut up as I'm trying to get this all trimmed up and cut. Here's why I trim the hedges, and I think it's similar to what God does when he trims, when he prunes us. First of all, there's a lot of dead stuff I'm cutting off. A lot of dry branches, dead branches. There's also some branches that you've got to cut off because they have disease. And then a couple years ago, I had a friend of mine that does this for a living. He trims bushes and hedges, and like he works in landscaping. So he came over to give me a hand, and he's like, dude, you're not trimming these back far enough. I'm like, if I trim it back any farther, they're going to die. He's like, no, they're going to die if you don't. They're so thick and entangled that until you trim them further, the sunlight can't actually penetrate down. The airflow can't get through, and they're shrinking inside, which means eventually what you see on the outside will also start to shrink. He goes, the more you cut them back, the more sun, the more air gets inside, the healthier they get, and the more they grow. Do you understand that the reason that God prunes us is to take away the spiritually dead or diseased parts of our lives? That then his light can penetrate deeper into us so that the flow of the Holy Spirit through us will produce greater growth and fruit. You might go, okay, but pruning still sucks. It does. It's not an enjoyable experience, though it is beneficial. You go, yeah, but it's just so painful. I mean, I thought God was like tender and merciful and long-suffering and compassionate and kind and caring, and he is. But imagine all the ways that God could have described his pruning work. For example, just a couple tools out of my own yard. What if God's analogy would have been an axe? What if he would have been, I don't prune back the bushes, I axe the bushes. I mean, there's not really any pruning going on here. It's just kind of destructive. I mean, this is incredibly destructive. It's incredibly impersonal. It's intrusive. It's obnoxious. It's horrific. This will prune nothing. The only thing this will do is destroy. Had God said, I axe my people, you're like, well, I guess we're goners. He could have also he could have said, I use pruning shears, right? I mean, it's a little bit more delicate. I mean, you can actually prune with this a little bit. You can get in there. But have you ever used shears and you try to cut one thing and you cut, like, I'm going to get in here and get this one. And you're like, dang it. And you cut the one you don't want to cut, right? And you can still do this from a distance. It's not personal. It's not intimate. But here's what's so amazing about the way that God so intentionally chose the language and the visual. When you prune, you have a smaller instrument in one hand, and what do you do with the other? You hold it so that your decisions are much more strategic, far more intentional, and way more intimate because you're actually involved and you're holding and you're getting in to all the right spaces and only cutting what needs to be. Listen, some of you are in a season like this right now. And there's some pruning going on in your life, and maybe you haven't even interpreted it that way. Maybe it's just your boss is unfair, or I can't believe that person did this to me, or maybe it's something else is being blamed, and you haven't yet acknowledged that perhaps what it is God himself is pruning. Maybe it's that relationship that you so desperately want to work out, and it just seems like it isn't going to, and you're wondering, and you're fighting to hold on, and God's going, will you, and you're like, no, give me that back, and he's like, no, listen. Trust me, this relationship's got to go. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. And maybe some of you right now, you're at the place in life where the decision you need to make more than anything else with God is to allow him to prune. Because he is intimate, he is tender, he is wise, he is doing it for your good and your benefit and your growth. Even when it stings. He knows what he's doing. And if you will let him, he will produce in you what you could never produce. Jesus is the vine. The Father is the gardener. So Jesus keeps us connected. The Father is what prunes. So what do we do? Do we do anything in the process? I think at least a couple of things that we have to be willing to do. Maybe there's a whole list, but I'll give you just a few. One is to surrender to the process with humility. It's to be humble, number one. Let me give you one more verse. It comes out of 1 Peter. This is one of Jesus' followers and disciples. He once wrote this: all of you clothe yourselves with humility towards one another, because God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. And watch this. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. What he's saying is, as God is doing his work, his mighty hand is pruning. Don't fight him. Don't try to understand all of it. Do you know one of the biggest struggles we have in our walk with God? I see it all the time. I feel it myself. I've fought it myself. Is this idea that if what he's doing and who he is doesn't make sense, we won't humble ourselves to his work or to him. Do you know what? This isn't the best form of parenting, but every now and then you got to drop the "because I said so" card, right? Because I'm dad, because I'm mom, because I said so, and I'm not arguing anymore. Like, who hasn't had many of those moments with their kids? I can give you dozens of them where it's just like, listen, until you live under your own roof, it's just what it is. I'm going to try and reason with you. Like, you've been there where you're reasoning, you're giving an explanation, you're waiting for the moment that they go, "You're so wise." Never happens. So finally you're like, mom card, dad card. You know, because I'm in charge, right? So my son actually threw it back at me. True story. Just this last week, there's something that we've always told him. Listen, as long as you live under our roof, you will not do this. So the other day he did something. I was like, whoa, whoa. And he goes, "Tell me what you used to tell me, Dad. Tell me what you used to tell me, Mom." And I knew where he's going. He's like, "Don't live under your roof anymore." I was like, oh boy. I'm like, so I had to amend it. I'm like, as long as you're under my roof, I don't care if you live or not. He's like, "Nope, you can't go back now. Can't move the goalpost." But like, that's what we just do. We drop that card sometimes. Listen, because I'm in charge. Do you ever give that credibility to God? Do you ever give that permission to him? Because sometimes our biggest wrestle with God and letting him do what he wants in our life is not until I fully understand you or what you're doing. And if I don't understand you, and if I don't understand you what you're doing, it doesn't make sense to me, then no. No, Peter says, humble yourself under the mighty hand of the Lord, and he will lift you up in due time. There's this idea that I constantly combat, and I've combated it myself. I combat it in conversation all the time, which is this idea that, well, if God's really loving, then I just can't believe he would do fill in the blank, or he would require fill in the blank, or he would request fill in the blank. Yeah, well, the problem is if you can't imagine. Because the scriptures tell me that God is above our ways. He's above our thoughts. So he is above our imagination. So his expectations will be above our expectations. If we box God into our understanding, we will never shape our lives around his expectations. We'll shape our lives around our desires. But he says, trust me, trust me. But part of that trust requires us humbling ourselves to him. Giving him the permission to do what he wants, request what he wants, command what he wants, ask what he wants, and even prune what he wants. And when we can give him that kind of trust, when we can do more than just make Jesus God, but make him actual Lord of our life, because you know it's really easy to make Jesus God. Easier to do that than it is to make him Lord. But if he's not Lord, then you are. But when we make him Lord of our lives, of every dimension of it, then you can step into the second thing that is so crucial in the process, which is simply this: be willing. While he's doing his work, you're willing. You're willing to submit yourself to the process. One of the best relationships I have and conversations I've had in the last couple of years is a friend of mine who was wise enough a few years ago to realize something I was going through was pruning. And I thought it was other people. I was mad. I was frustrated. And he said, "I think you're being pruned." I was like, "Well, I think you're being pruned." He's like, "No, I think you are." And I said, "Okay, well, I don't know what to do because it feels pretty awful." And he said, "Well, you know that scene in Dances with Wolves?" And I was like, "Which one?" If you've never seen it, it's Kevin Costner, And he says, the one where he's in the beginning and it's a Civil War setting and he's been shot and his leg's about to be amputated and he doesn't want his leg amputated, so he climbs up on a horse. It's a general's horse, and he rides out into the battlefield in between the blue and the gray, and they just start shooting at him. And he kind of gives himself over to that. He's going to get people's attention one way or another so that he can then say, don't cut my face. I was like, yeah, I know the scene. And actually, here it is. If you haven't seen it or you can't remember it, he said there's this one moment when he's riding a horse. He goes, do you remember when he just kind of threw his arms back and leaned back into the saddle? And he just went for the ride. And he had no idea if it was going to result in his leg being saved or a bullet to the chest. But he went for the ride. He said, I think God's pruning you, and I think what he's asking you to do is just lean back into the ride. Now, this isn't something that you can physically go do right now, right? Like sometimes we want application that's like, go do this. This is an internal application. This is where you're just going to yield yourself internally to the work that God's doing. God, doesn't make sense. I don't even know what the outcome's going to be, but I'll go for the ride because I'll trust you. I mean, this is Jesus in the garden saying, Father, if there's any other way for the salvation of humanity than my death on the cross, please, but your will be done, not mine. That's Jesus going along for the ride. And when you do that, the other thing that it gives you the power to do is the last thing that we'll do today, is to be still. Because when we're in pain, we tend to panic, and panic leads to all kinds of flailing behavior. Relationally, we flail. Mentally, we flail. Emotionally, we flail. We try to figure things out. We try to fix things. We just get busy, busy, busy. You know, one of the consistent instructions of God throughout the Bible is be still. Be still. Be still. Be still. Exodus chapter 14, verse 14, when the Israelites were penned in between the pursuing Egyptian army that was there to kill them and the Red Sea, God says to Moses, I will fight for you. You need only be still. Interesting, because it's not like they were at a crossroads with other options of like, hey, no, be still, don't go that way. There was run into the army or run into the water. He's saying this is more of an internal thing. Like, be still, calm yourself, be quiet, be still. You know, when God is pruning us and you want to move and you want to fight it and you want to flip, be still, because as he's pruning, as you're still, that's when he does the fighting. You don't have to fight. He does the fighting. You be still. Psalms 46, David once said, be still and know that I am God. And when he's pruning and we're still, not only does he do the fighting, but it takes us to a deeper understanding of who he is and a deeper worship of who he is. Listen, our God is a good God, immensely gracious, tremendously loving. And in that grace and love, it means that with wisdom and precision and intimacy, he will also prune to your benefit, to his glory, and to the benefit of those around you. God, I just want to ask that this teaching from your son that I can't make full sense of in just a little bit of time on one Sunday morning, that you would continue to and make truth ring deep in our hearts about your goodness and your love and the way that you so tenderly, affectionately, and beneficially prune. Would we learn more and more how to be men and women who humbly surrender to the process and wait in stillness as you fight and draw us in to bear more fruit. In Jesus' name, amen.
Would you stand as we worship this morning? Let this be your prayer, that we surrender everything to you, Lord. We need you to work through our lives. Here's where I lay it down, every burden, every crown. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down, every lie and every doubt. This is my surrender. And I will make room.
surrender. Here is where I lay it down. Every lie and every doubt. This is my surrender. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Yes, and I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you, yes, to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Do whatever you want to. Shake up the ground. We'll shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Oh, your way is better. We'll shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Yes, your way is better. Shake it up. We'll shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Yes, and I will make room for you, Jesus, to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to. Come on, lift that up. To do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to.
So as we're going into this next song, we sung it last week, and it's called Keep Us Abiding. And what the song is really reminding us is that, for one, we're asking God to keep reminding us to abide in Him as He abides in us. And I had this thought when I was coming in today. So on the farm, we heat our whole house with wood, and keeping a fire going is kind of an art when you're having to do it 24/7. And if you just load the firebox with a ton of wood and then try and light it on fire, you're gonna get a ton of smoke. But when you actually leave space between the logs for the fire to really breathe and for the flame to really catch, that's how you get a really hot burning fire, and it's how you get a very long-lasting burn. And I can't help but think that that's exactly how our relationship can work with Jesus sometimes. Is that when we're abiding in him, when we're creating the space in our life to really spend time with him, that's when our relationship with him is going to continue to flourish. And it also provides the space for him to do some pruning in our life. So as we're singing this, we just remember we live in a culture where we think that busy is better. And we constantly fill up our time with things that kind of can distract us from our relationship and our time with Jesus. And so in this song, what I always do in this moment of worship is I just ask God, continue to remind me to spend time with you. Continue to remind me that amongst all the busyness, what I really need is relationship with you and closeness with you.
You are patient, you are kind. Love is always on your eyes. Prince of Peace and faithful friend, you are good until the end. Make your home in us as we dwell with you. You'll always be enough, so keep us abiding, keep us abiding. Lord, we give you back control. You are gentle with our soul, and it's our joy to follow you. Your ways are higher than our own, so make your home in us as we dwell with you. You'll always be with us, so keep us abiding, keep us abiding. Yeah. You're teaching us how to be more like you, and as we're remaining, you make us new. You're teaching us how to
I just get one more minute from you? Take a seat for 1 second. Hopefully in the last couple of weeks, you've received a few emails from us that this isn't going to be completely out of context. But there has been several months of work being done across all campuses at Kensington to try and address just some financial realities that we have found ourselves in the last couple of years for a myriad of reasons. And that's resulted in us trying to figure out how to right-size our budget, which meant we have had to look at operations, we've had to look at staffing, we've had to look at everything that there is to look at, all of which has led to us having to make some very, very difficult decisions to lay off about 7% of our staff or change their jobs from part-time to full-time or full layoffs in the last couple of weeks. These emails, one is from Craig Mays, one is from myself to our campus. If you've not read them yet, a couple things I would ask. If you could go back and check your inbox, you may have it. If you don't get emails from us, if you could see somebody at the hub if you want them, it's a way for you to stay informed. If you want to get these emails, we can even make sure we get them back to you as well if you haven't received them. But they'll provide a little bit more context and some of what we've had to go through and the why of these decisions. It might be some of your questions. The reason I wanted to pause before we run out this morning is because all of it has led to a number of decisions we've had to make, which are going to be challenging and painful for us at the campus here. But one of them that we really want to talk about this morning is that in the midst of these decisions, it led us to have to lay off our K-Kids director, Ryan Morrill, who we call him a director. Ryan, if you want to go ahead and come up. Let's think about this morning. His title is K-Kids director, but in all reality, he has, for so many years and to so many thousands of kids and families, been a pastor. He is our K-Kids pastor. And we wanted to... As difficult as these decisions have been, we do not want to do anything that feels like it's being done in secret or behind closed doors or in the shadows. We are trying, even in the difficulty and the frustration and the pain of these decisions, we're trying to be as upfront and forthright as we can about all of it. And especially with Ryan, who has so long and so just relentlessly served here, we did not want to close the month out, which is his last month here with us in May, without having a moment to just pray for him. Ryan's asked that he would not be asked to say anything this morning, maybe for obvious reasons. So we're just going to pray for him right now. And at a later time, Susan and I have talked. Why don't you just maybe share some of that thought?
We're waiting for Ryan's lead to actually plan a proper celebration for somebody who for 27 years has left a legacy in kids and families and my own kids. And we want to celebrate him right. We just need a little bit of air right now in between. So that is going to happen in the near future.
Would you stand with me? I'm gonna pray, but just ask that you would partner with me in that, just by your standing. And even if you feel comfortable, maybe just to extend a hand, almost to say, hey, I'm up here, I'm with you. We want to be a part of this and got you as well. So just the fact that Ryan is here this morning and the integrity that is his character to be present in such a painful moment, I just want us to do all we can to be present to him. So Jesus, I just say thank you. Thank you for Ryan. Thank you for your saving work in his life. And thank you for your work through his life. Thank you for the countless people, many of which he may never know until eternity one day, that his life is touched and impacted, has been the introduction to you, Jesus. And God, in this moment, I am asking that you would be what no person can be to Ryan. You would be the one that meets him in his confusion, that meets him in his sadness, that meets him even in his frustrations, that meets him in his questions right now, that meets him in his uncertainty, that you would be the one who provides a way where there seems to be no way, that you would open up and make clear paths in front of him for where you would have him to be and do and go next. And God, I really don't ask that idly. I do ask it because I have seen time and time again your faithfulness, even in my own life, in similar times and moments where it seemed like there was nothing in front of me, but you made a way. And so, God, I pray that over Ryan, be close, be tender, be compassionate, be wisdom, be comfort, be provider to he and his whole family right now, God. I pray for all the many lives that are even affected by this, that will be frustrated or confused by it. God, just you would do your good work to lead us as the separating and as the just the distance between and the saying goodbye in a role that has been for so long. There is just an ache and a ripple that will create. And so, God, you lead through this in our church, in his life, and in his family. Thank you that you are faithful beyond what we can see. Thank you that you do what we could never comprehend. Thank you that as we sang this morning, through all generations, you are faithful, you are firm, you are unshakable. So be that, I pray, to Ryan, to his heart, to his inmost soul, and to his future in front of him, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. As you walk out this morning, if you got something in your life that we can pray for, that you need support for, would you let us do that? We're going to be up here as a team, be in the lobby as a team, and certainly if you have a chance, as Ryan hangs around, just expend your love to him and your encouragement and support to him. And we'll see you next Sunday. Thank you.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Man, what a powerful message, just talking through John 15 again about abiding in God and abiding in Jesus, in the vine. And ultimately, we need to be pruned at times. Sometimes it's through things that happen to us or what God allows for us. And other times it's us being the people that need to prune things out of our lives in order to bear fruit and what God has for us. So I hope we take an important inventory of our own lives in this moment and begin to understand and look at our lives and seeing those moments that are just pruning for us to begin to really, truly bear fruit in our lives. So I hope you guys have a great week. If you need anything, we would just love to walk alongside of you and pray with you and for you. So reach out to us and subscribe to the channel so that you can get the next one when it pops up. So hope you guys have a great week. Bless you, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.